What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 390 of #AskGSM, here today for Wednesday, May 19th, Kane's favorite day of the year, 2021. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. We got a lot of questions to get to here today from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you want to send in a question to the show for me to answer, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Starting with Sandy Dad F from YouTube, their first question was, and I got a lot of questions about this, which we'll get into, obviously. Starting with this one, though. Did the zombie lumberjack match ruin the show quality for Backlash, just like when the exploding barbed wire finish was botched and brought Revolution down, even though both shows were solid? Hardly anyone is talking about the other matches that happened. So, with the zombie shit, again, like I said, we got a lot of questions about it. I'll answer it again a little bit later because I got a lot of questions about this. I thought it was terrible. I am really no different. If you were coming here looking for a different opinion than everyone else on the internet right now, you're going to be sorely disappointed because I thought it was awful. I don't know why they thought that would be a good idea. I'm fine with them promoting stuff if it's done the right way. I can't possibly sit here and say that I was okay with this. I mean, I wasn't like routinely shitting on the match as it was happening. I just kind of let it all happen. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck is this? I mean, honestly, who is this supposed to appeal to? The fact that the wrestlers had to sell for this shit was probably the worst part. And the worst part wasn't even the match itself. Like, I thought Revolution, because I saw it in your question. Miz and Priest had a pretty decent match. Nothing great. I'm glad it was this match, and not any other match on the card, just because we've seen Priest and Miz a bunch of times. Priest has beaten Miz every single time. This match wasn't even necessary. I guarantee you the only reason this match even happened was for the zombie stuff to happen so they can promote Army of the Dead. I know Batista's a very busy guy. Is he that busy of a guy where they can't just have him Skype in or have him show up? He lives in Florida, does he not? I mean, he must have been. He said he was on a plane or something when people were tweeting him on Sunday, saying that this sucked. And he said, why don't you go tweet Vince McMahon, which is a great idea. So clearly he was in the air, going somewhere, filming something, doing, a media appearance, whatever, to promote the movie, Army of the Dead. But still, I mean, I'm sure he didn't even approve of this. I mean, he made it sound like he thought it was shit too. And he was upset when Asuka got pinned by Rhea Ripley last week on Raw. So for anyone thinking, oh, this was Batista's idea, he's to blame for this, then you are the biggest fool in the world. This was garbage. Did it ruin the show? The answer is no. You're right, not a lot of people are paying attention enough, I think enough attention to the other matches on this card. Because I think if you take away that Lumberjack match, this is probably going to be one of the better pay-per-views of the year. I mean, honestly, I thought every match was good to great except for the Lumberjack shit. Even Priest and Miz was okay up until the Lumberjacks got involved, and it was awful. But, even Bianca and Bayley, which I thought was the weakest match outside of the Lumberjack match, was still very good because they work well together. The tag team title match told a great story. The opening Raw Women's Championship triple threat was very good. I thought the WWE Championship triple threat was a great match. And the main event was awesome between Roman Reigns and Cesaro. And it was a 6-match card. It was over within 3 hours. I was going to say quick and painless, but the zombie shit happened. So if you take that shit away, this is a great show. And I still think it was a pretty good show. If you had to ask me, thumbs down, thumbs up, easily thumbs up. I thought it was a good show. A very good show. No title. We did get one title change, with the SmackDown Tag Team titles going to the Mysterios. The Lumberjack stuff, unfortunately, is what this pay-per-view is going to be remembered for. Revolution, I'm going to be honest with you, I thought Backlash, if you take out the Lumberjack shit, was a better pay-per-view than Revolution. To be completely honest with you. Revolution, even 2 months later, I don't remember a lot about. I enjoyed Sting and Allen versus Team Taz. The main event was good. I really don't care for the Revolution deathmatch shit. I didn't give a crap about that, really. I thought Roman and Cesaro was better. It's not really about comparing, but it didn't even ruin that show either. The ending to Revolution did not ruin that show either. It just was kind of like a middle-of-the-road pay-per-view for them. But the ending is what that pay-per-view, unfortunately, is going to be defined by. That's all that people are talking about 2 months later, not any one match on the show. Unlike Revolution last year, where people were talking all about the Bucks and Omega and Page, that tag team match for months. This year, it's going to be that awful ending. For Backlash this year, it's going to be that terrible Lumberjack spot with the zombies. Again, I thought the makeup looked cool, but that was about it. Like, at least it was good-looking makeup. But it made the zombie from that premiere episode of ECW 15 years ago look like fucking The Undertaker. Or like Shawn Michaels in terms of, like, how great that was compared to this shit. Like, it just went on and on and on. It wouldn't end. Again, the fact that, like, Morrison was taken away from them. Or or the zombies, like, abducted him. They, like, ate him or some shit. I don't know. They took Miz away, too, but Miz got hurt, so he's going to be out for a while, which sucks. So I guess at least they're explaining that away by saying that he died, but he'll be back at some point, obviously. With Morrison, it looked like he got dragged away by them too, but then he was back on Raw the very next night with no explanation whatsoever. So then why even do it? Why even forget? I mean, I'm glad we didn't get constant replays of it on Raw this week, but if you're not going to acknowledge it because you know it was bad, then why even air it in the first place? I don't think if that match got cut, I think a total number of maybe 2 people would have been upset if we didn't get Priest and Miz on Sunday, if they just canceled it as advertised. You can't really do that, but it's better than what they did instead, which was terrible. Your next question, thoughts on AEW EVPs not getting along backstage. So this has been a hot topic for the last week now. I had seen some people mention it from like 1 or 2 different sources, but they're not very credible sources. I really don't put a lot of stock into things that are reported until it's reported by Fightful, PW Insider. Even Meltzer has a very sketchy track record, so I kind of lean more towards Mike Johnson of PW Insider and Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful. And sometimes some other sources, but usually they're the most spot on of everyone, even over Dave Meltzer. So I read the report, heard they might not be on the same page. They might not even be on speaking terms at this point. I think it probably is being exaggerated a little much with what's being reported. I'm sure it's not all, kisses and roses or whatever the fuck the expression is over in AEW with the EVPs and whatever. I'm sure they're not all best friends. I'm sure Cody is kind of off to the side doing his own thing. It really seems like he's kind of isolated from the rest of the EVPs and everyone else. He might be close with Tony Khan, but it doesn't seem like he's overly close with Kenny or the Bucks and, those guys. So, I do believe it. I'm sure there is some smoke to the fire there. If it's being reported by various sources and not just one, and it's been reported for a while now, various people are saying it, and they haven't really come out and said anything about it, aside from the fact that the Young Bucks put it in their bio, which, just because they made a joke about it in their bio on Twitter as characters and heels, as heels in character, doesn't mean that there's no animosity backstage. So I'm sure there is. I'm sure there absolutely is. There have been disagreements. There have been arguments over certain things. What those things are, I have no idea. But it really is weird how Cody Rhodes is off in his own bubble doing his own thing. I know he can't fight for the World Championship right now, but you would think this Elite stuff would involve him, because he was once a member of the Elite. Like Adam Page is involved with the Elite stuff, but he's off doing his own thing right now, because they're going to go back to Page and Omega eventually. I don't get the sense right now that they want to do Cody Rhodes and Kenny Omega, when they probably should. Honestly, that Double or Nothing main event should be Kenny Omega versus Cody Rhodes. Even if Cody Rhodes loses, that should be the match of the pay-per-view, because they're the ones, the former members of the Elite. Cody Rhodes can lose, put over Omega, blah, blah, blah. They have that stupid stipulation in place where they can't do that right now. That's the biggest problem with the whole Omega Rhodes idea. But still, I think that'd be a much bigger attraction, a much bigger match, even though we've seen it before. Not in AEW, though. It's been a few years since we've seen it in Ring of Honor or New Japan or whatever. So that's what I would have done. I know that they obviously aren't doing that, but that's what I would have done. But it seems like Cody is content doing his own thing with the Nightmare Factory and QT Marshall, which is just garbage. I'm glad he's working with a Gogo and trying to get him over. That's awesome. The Factory shit in general is just not good. It's just not good. Like, who cares about Cody Rhodes versus QT Marshall, which I'll get to later. So, anyway, going back to the EVP shit, I'm sure there is some truth to it. I would need to hear more about it. Like, it depends, is this a non-story in a week? Does it continue on? Does it reflect the show in any way on screen? No, the more EVPs you have, the less likely it is they're all going to be on the same page forever. And they've been in business now for over 2 years. It was bound to happen eventually. I don't think there's going to be some major falling out with Cody Rhodes leaving or being demoted or whatever. It doesn't really sound like that's the case. I think some people, a lot of anti-AEW people, hear this story and think, oh, this company's going down, they're going to hate each other in a month, blah, blah, blah. Not saying that won't happen, but I think it's very unlikely. I think people are just kind of jumping to conclusions here based off what's being reported. So, is there truth to it? Most likely, definitely, I would assume. Is it as dire of a situation as some people are making it out to be? I don't think so. So again, it's a wait-and-see approach. If more comes out of this in the months ahead, there might be a problem. But if it's really just arguments because we're all, human, and people just argue and disagree on shit, then, again, there's really no news there. I mean, that was kind of like saying the sky is blue, so we'll see what comes out of it. But it is an interesting story to follow because you don't really hear stories like this too often. Now let's go over to the Facebook questions from Noel from Facebook. Their question was, top 5 wrestlers that could beat Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. I don't even know if there is a top 5. Big E comes to mind as someone who could beat Roman for the championship. When? I don't know. Is that SummerSlam? Is that WrestleMania next year? I don't know. McIntyre might be one. I don't know if McIntyre is really the guy, though, to beat Roman, personally. I don't know. I just think Roman and Drew can have a great feud. I just don't know if I want to see Drew to be the one. I don't know if I want to see Drew be the one to beat Roman after all this time. So Big E really comes to mind as someone who could really benefit from beating Roman. Cesaro obviously didn't get the job done. It would have been cool if he got that big moment in front of fans, won the championship. I don't think we're getting that, so probably not Cesaro. I'm trying to think of other people from the SmackDown side. Not Rollins. I want to see that feud at some point down the road, not right now. I just don't really want to see Rollins be the one to beat Roman. We've seen that before. The matches we've seen before, not with this dynamic. I just don't want to see Rollins being the one to beat Roman. I just keep coming back to Big E. I don't really know, maybe Damian Priest, if they move him over by the end of the year. Will Roman still be champion by then? There's a very good chance. I don't really know. Bobby Lashley, probably not. I would keep Bobby on Raw anyway, I think. I'm trying to think AJ Styles, maybe. AJ's an option. I know he's been WWE champion twice before, but he hasn't ever beaten Roman. They had those 2 matches 5 years ago, almost exactly to the day 5 years ago, at Payback and then again in Extreme Rules. They never faced off after that. So, AJ finally getting his win over Roman, becoming Universal Champion, only to lose it, again, soon after, is an option. Brock, no. The Brock match I've kind of warmed up to since August, because people were saying, oh, is this going to lead to Brock and Roman at WrestleMania 37? And I'm so glad that didn't happen. That would have been too soon for it. I just don't really want to see that, especially since it's a match we've seen many, 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 many times. So, Brock, no. I don't want to see Brock beat him for the title. I wouldn't mind seeing the match maybe at some point, but seeing Brock beat him for the belt, no. Finn Balor would be cool given their history. I don't know if Balor would be the one to beat Roman. I don't get that sense. If Balor is brought back to SmackDown, maybe, probably not. Karrion Kross, it might be too soon for that. I don't know. I just keep going back to Big E. Maybe there's someone else I'm not thinking of right now. But Big E, to me, feels like the guy. Not The Rock. I would do the Rock match. I wouldn't have The Rock be the one to beat Roman. I think that'd be pretty stupid. Not John Cena. I wouldn't bring back John Cena to do it, or Goldberg. I mean, again, the Goldberg thing is one they haven't explored yet. But again, Goldberg's also coming off 2 losses. He lost to Drew McIntyre at the Rumble, and he lost to Braun Strowman last year at WrestleMania. So is the next time you bring him back going to be a loss to Roman? Maybe, but that wouldn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I'd bring him back for a quick win over Baron Corbin or something and then give him a title shot. I mean, if Goldberg never came back, I don't think any of us would really complain. I like Goldberg, but there's not a lot of matches left they haven't done that I'm clamoring to see. Him and Roman maybe, just because they kind of built it up and they never delivered because Roman pulled out of WrestleMania last year. But you would have to make it make sense. In this current circumstance, it doesn't make a lot of sense. with Goldberg not having any wins in the last year and a half since he beat Bray Wyatt or The Fiend or whatever back at Super Showdown 2020. So I don't know. I think, again, I just keep going back to Big E. You say 5, and I can't even name 2. I said maybe AJ. Maybe AJ. Big E is, to me, the guy. I don't know when that would be again, whether it be SummerSlam or WrestleMania. Maybe you can build up Big E for SummerSlam and have him lose. I mean, I say pull a Lex Luger, and the Luger situation didn't end the way they wanted it to, unfortunately. But I say that in that, what if you just have, hopefully this time it would work, but you have Big E lose at SummerSlam, and then he has to kind of work his way back up, and then he wins the championship at WrestleMania after winning the Rumble. I mean, that would be pretty cool. Keith Lee is another one. If Keith Lee comes back to maybe not comes back to SmackDown, but gets drafted to SmackDown, Roman and Keith Lee would be fucking awesome, based off the quick interaction they had at Survivor Series 2019. Keith Lee would be another great choice. Aleister Black doesn't scream to me as someone who could beat Roman, especially if he's coming back as a heel and not as a babyface. But yeah, I'll say Keith Lee and Big E. Probably Big E number 1, Keith Lee number 2, AJ Styles 3, and that's about it. Everyone else, I would not have them beat Roman Reigns. Anything can change. I mean, like Edge can come back super hot, and I would want to see him win the championship maybe. I don't foresee that happening. I would just stick to the newer guys personally. Damian Priest is another one. Again, AJ Styles isn't new, but there is a story there. Anyone else, no thanks. We move on to the Twitter questions. Let's see, starting with at noob_n_co1991. Do you think Charlotte Flair is becoming a third wheel in the feud between Asuka and Rhea Ripley? I believe it's time for Charlotte to move on from the Raw Women's Championship picture. Nah, I don't think she's the third wheel. Just because she was pinned last night on Raw, or Monday on Raw, by Asuka, doesn't make her the third wheel. I think you're mistaking it, my friend. Asuka is absolutely the third wheel. Don't let an Asuka upset. Well, I mean, I say upset. I mean, Asuka is the more established of anyone. Maybe not of Charlotte, but way more than Rhea Ripley. Don't let Asuka beating Charlotte on Raw fool you. They have no plans to do Rhea and Asuka as the feud going forward. They've already done it three or four times. They did it at WrestleMania, Rhea won. They had a rematch the next night on Raw, which ended in a non-finish. They did a rematch a week ago on Raw, and Rhea won that clean. And Asuka got pinned to Backlash. So they did what they did on Monday to maintain credibility for Asuka. I don't mind that. But they would be dumb to go back to Rhea and Asuka. Who cares at this point? We've seen Rhea beat her multiple times. I think they're just kind of delaying the inevitable and putting Charlotte in the title picture one-on-one. Because the idea was that if Charlotte beat Asuka, she would get another title shot. To me, that was way too predictable, so I like that they kind of switched it up instead, gave Asuka the win, and then Charlotte might find another way into the title picture. So I like that a lot. No, Charlotte is not the third wheel. She's a bigger focus than even Rhea Ripley is, so if anything, the first wheel is Charlotte, the second wheel is Rhea Ripley, the third wheel is Asuka. I don't see Asuka's days in the Raw Women's Championship picture going much further. She might get one more shot on Raw. What's even the point of doing that when Rhea Ripley's already beaten her 3 times? She pinned her at Raw last week, she pinned her at Backlash, and at WrestleMania. It's time for Asuka to move on, not Charlotte Flair. And we have yet to see the big rematch between Charlotte and Rhea anyway. I don't care about Rhea and Asuka anymore because of the booking. I care about Charlotte and Rhea. That's the match I want to see, whether it be at Hell in a Cell or Money in the Bank or SummerSlam or however long they drag it out for. That is the money match to do right now because Rhea has yet to avenge her loss to Charlotte from last year. Noob's second question. What are your thoughts of the zombies at WrestleMania Backlash? I believe that was the most embarrassing part. Do you think it helped promote Army of the Dead? Or was it just failed advertising? It was definitely failed advertising. I don't think a lot of wrestling fans came out of that match, came out of the Zombies Lumberjack match, and thought to themselves, hey, you know what? Let me go see the movie after watching this. If anything, it probably made them resent the movie. There's probably nothing wrong with the movie. I was going to go see the movie, and I still might. This didn't really change my opinion, although it kind of came close. People are going to go to the movie theater and say, hey, that is the movie that got promoted at the pay-per-view and ruined the show. Because that shit was terrible. They're not going to think of Batista probably when they see Army of the Dead. They're going to think terrible zombies in a lumberjack match, at least for wrestling fans. So, if anything, I think it had the opposite effect, which is not good. And now wrestling fans are going to hate it like when David Arquette won the WCW World Championship 20 years ago. Maybe not quite that bad, but people, I guarantee you, will now resent the movie. The next time WWE fans hear Army of the Dead, they're going to think of that dumb shit. And there's nothing WWE, unfortunately, at this point, can do to change that. I don't think that was the desired effect Batista wanted when they started promoting the movie on the pay-per-view. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine. Check him out on YouTube as well at Real Honesty with John Ritland. His first question was, so who's going to end up playing Lily, he says. Nikki Cross, Shayna, Reggie's Loud Suits, question mark. I don't, do you need to have someone play Lily? Like, do you mean like someone kind of fills the role? Or, I mean, we already have the doll, which is dumb. I don't know. I like Alexa Bliss and her execution of the character, but like the whole supernatural bullshit, I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm just not a big fan of it at all. So who would you put in the role of Lily? Again, I don't really think you need anyone. I think Alexa on her own with the doll is fine. Are you saying like give Alexa Bliss to the Fiend? You know what I'm saying? Like what Alexa Bliss was to the Fiend, you want someone to be that for Alexa, or whoever you think. I'm not even saying that you want that, but that's what you're expecting. I don't even think we'll get that. If they were to cast someone as Lily, it would have to be Nikki Cross. I mean, they already have history. Nikki Cross plays that crazy girl character extremely well that we saw in NXT and early on in the main roster. She plays that character extremely well. So absolutely Nikki Cross. They're not doing jack shit with her anyway. She was the only actually. I don't know why, but she was the only female lumberjack out there on Raw this week. Why just Nikki Cross? Like, why not, I don't know, Naomi or Lana or Mandy or Dana? I thought that was weird. So definitely Nikki. Shayna, no. Shayna's basically ruined at this point, but I don't know. Yeah, no one else really but Nikki would make sense if they even do that. I don't see them doing that, but if they do, Nikki Cross would be the person for the role. At least it gets her back on TV, if nothing else, and I think she would play the character well. His second question, so can WWE just drop the 24/7 championship now and never reference it again? It's way stale now, in my opinion. I completely agree. I was hoping that with the fact they weren't featuring it on Raw up until Monday, I was hoping that we wouldn't get it again after that. I was hoping they had quietly kind of disbanded the championship, and yeah, it was still being, featured on their website, promoted on their website as like an active title, whatever. But I was hoping it would lead to a lot like the Cruiserweight Championship when Hornswoggle was champion, 15 years ago when he won the title, and they kind of deactivated it on the website, of all things. They didn't really have like a proper segment on SmackDown to announce that it was no longer around. I was hoping they would do the same thing, in this case, well-deserved, for the 24/7 championship. It's been around for 2 fucking years, as of tomorrow. May 20th was when they introduced that championship. And now, I don't know, it's just not good. They're trading it between the same 2 people. I love R-Truth, but surely you can find another role for him on the show that does not involve the pointless 24/7 championship. I was really, really hoping we went like 2 months without getting any mention of the 24/7 championship. And then they brought it back on Raw this week. I was like, ugh, so close. But yeah, it's just an absolute prop at this point. I'm sure that was always the point. Clearly, it's a joke championship. I get it. But the point of a joke championship, it should be for it to be funny. It's not, though. It's not entertaining. It hasn't been worthwhile. It wasted a full 60 seconds of TV time on Raw. Why not use that instead on a Ricochet promo or something? I mean, honestly, like 60 seconds doesn't sound like a lot, but take that segment and devote it to someone else on the show who could use it. Not some pointless championship that no one gives a shit about. And again, I know that was always the point, but the purpose of a joke championship should be for it to be entertaining, and it's just not. John's third question here. So is Double or Nothing going to be a make-or-break pay-per-view for AEW? I say that because after the end of Revolution, Blood and Guts, and some questionable creative decisions, they seem like they're losing some favor with the fans. The thing is that with the shows that you mentioned, and I agree, they did end in polarizing fashion. Revolution was a botch. Blood and Guts was, I don't know if it was a botch or just a bad, just a terrible technical decision when it came to the camera cuts and not shooting it right. That was just bad judgment. The Revolution thing, I think, was I think a botched ending. I don't know if it was supposed to go off the way that it did. There's no way they thought that would be like this major ending. The explosives or the pyro must have failed to go off at Revolution. I refuse to believe that it was anything but a botch, because if that's what they actually had in mind, that is concerning, because that was terrible. Yeah, but it's not like the shows were bad, I don't think. I thought Revolution overall was a good show. I thought Blood and Guts was a very good show. And the Blood and Guts match, that was great. It was really, again, it's the same thing as Revolution that we talked about earlier with the zombie shit at Backlash. The difference is that the zombie stuff happened in the middle of the show. That is how bad that was. So, if the Revolution stuff and Blood and Guts and that stuff happened in the middle of the show, I don't think people would automatically associate those pay-per-view titles, those big event titles, with the botches. For example, back at All Out last year, which I did not think was a good show at all. I mean, by AEW standards, it was not that good of a show. Probably the weakest pay-per-view they've done yet. The Matt Hardy situation, where he got messed up and bumped his head off the concrete, and they continued on. That was super unsafe. That was super dumb. That pay-per-view, I don't think, is marred by that Matt Hardy incident. That was in the middle of the show. Had it closed out the show, different story. They closed out the show instead with a very good Jon Moxley MJF match. Revolution, they closed out with the dumb, post-match death match spot with the explosives and shit. Blood and Guts closed out with that dumb spot where Jericho fell off the cage, which was a cool spot. It was the way they shot it, though, that looked terrible. So, if the shows weren't good, I would say, yeah, this is a make-or-break pay-per-view. I don't think AEW's Double or Nothing event is a make-or-break show. I really don't, because I think even if it's a very good show, it's not really going to matter one way or the other. I will say, though, they have to be more mindful about how they close the shows. And they've done a very good job in the past of closing out their pay-per-views. Just recently with Revolution, Blood and Guts, that hasn't been the case. So hopefully they can improve upon that. Double or Nothing closes out on a high note. I don't know if it would be a debut or probably not a title change. I'm not even really sure what you would close out with, because Omega, Pac, and Cassidy as a pay-per-view main event does not feel like a pay-per-view main event to me. That feels like it would be second from the top, a lot like Moxley and Brody Lee was last year. So I don't think it's a make-or-break pay-per-view, but they have to do a better job of closing out their shows, because 2 in a row, they're 0 for 2 right now when it comes to big pay-per-view, big show endings. They have not gotten people talking in the right way. Hopefully Double or Nothing has some better luck. Next question from the Average Grunt on Twitter. He said, going off what you said last week, should chamber matches be exclusively number 1 contender matches for the world titles that aren't picked by the Rumble winners? Or should it move back to a show like Survivor Series if it ever stops being themed around brand warfare? I guess, first of all, you make a couple of good points here. I do like the idea of the chamber matches being number 1 contender. And they've done that before. Roman Reigns won a number 1 contenders chamber match in 2018, I think it was. They did a number 1 contenders chamber match in 2013. That was won by Jack Swagger. Cena won one in 2011. I like the idea of the number 1 contenders ones. Because, again, like I said, like Average Grunt is referring to, they have had literally close to 10 titles retained inside the chamber in the last decade. That's terrible. Like, it completely defeats the purpose of the chamber, and anything can happen. If the champion always retains, which no one ever talks about, except for me, I feel like, how much does it really mean? So, I don't know. I do think they should make it number 1 contenders. They can make it the 1 chamber match on the show and not have 2. I like that idea a lot. Just have that show headlined. If you're going to do it in between Rumble and WrestleMania, have the 1 chamber match. Maybe 1 for the women as well, obviously. They can make it for a championship or, again, a number 1 contenders match to determine the challenger for the championship that wasn't picked by the Rumble winner. And we had a number 1 contenders chamber match this year that was won by Daniel Bryan. And then he was quickly beaten by Roman Reigns. But we got one this year too. I like that idea a lot. I do. It's not as exciting because there's no championship on the line. But if they're always being retained anyway, then what's even the point? So, I like that idea. I like it being moved to Survivor Series. But I honestly think Survivor Series should be all about the Elimination Tag Team matches and not Elimination Chamber. It would make sense with the title, Survivor Series, Elimination Chamber, which is kind of like sole survivor type situation. That was the only time we ever got to that Survivor Series, so it's not like it's this tradition they moved away from, like with the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania. We got that for several years before they moved away from it. The Survivor Series Elimination Chamber thing only happened once, with the match's debut in 2002. So I don't know if I would move it to Survivor Series. I don't even like it having its own pay-per-view. But again, I would bring back No Way Out and do the one in between WrestleMania and Rumble if you have to have a pay-per-view at that point. That's what I would do. Make it a number one contenders chamber match because the titles never change hands, and by the Rumble, they already have the WrestleMania plan set in stone anyway. Even if it is predictable, that makes more sense. Or I'm sorry, two. One number one contenders elimination chamber for the women, and then another one for the men. Again, you can move it to later on in the year, but I would get rid of Hell in a Cell altogether. How funny is that last week I talked about my ideal pay-per-view schedule and how pointless a pay-per-view like Hell in a Cell is, and now we're getting it brought back next month. Like, I feel like they do this to mess with me sometimes. But in all seriousness, though, I do like that idea. I would probably do the first one and move it to before WrestleMania. Survivor Series isn't a bad idea. I just, I don't know, I like that pay-per-view. Brand Warfare or not, I like the idea of that pay-per-view solely being, kind of centered around the elimination tag team matches per the traditional rules. At E13A, how do you feel about Tamina breaking the glass ceiling and finally becoming a, quote, in parentheses, tag team champion? You guys know, I don't care about Tamina. I think Tamina's terrible. I will say, good for her for finally getting her moment. Clearly meant a lot to her. I've seen a lot of outpour of support for her, and that's awesome. I'm not going to shit on that. I thought she cut probably the best promo of her career in Talking Smack. She was on Raw Talk this week. They had a successful title defense on Monday, her and Natalya. That's great. I don't think they're going to save the division. I really don't. The women's tag team division feels like it's just a dead end right now. And I really have no desire to see Tamina on all three brands as the women's tag team champion. I have no desire to see that. And I say all three, but NXT has their own women's tag team champions now. So why would they even need to go to NXT? Because NXT has their own set of women's tag titles. I still find Tamina to be terrible. She's been around for over a decade, and she really hasn't improved a lot at all. But again, I think a lot of people are very supportive of her title win because she seems like a nice person. She has never won a real championship before. Not 24/7 championship, this shit doesn't count. And it was over in like 20 minutes anyway. She was very emotional about the whole thing. Natalya getting emotional is nothing new. Like, the sky is blue, who cares? But Tamina getting emotional, I thought was a cool moment. Good for her. I still don't care from a performer standpoint about her being champion. As a person, though, and as a moment, I thought it was well-deserved. I thought that was pretty cool. We'll see how long the reign is. Maybe it's a terrible reign. Maybe they exceed my expectations and have a great reign as tag team champion. I don't know. But, I thought it was a nice moment for them. The pyro was a little much on SmackDown, but that's just my opinion. At E13A's second question here, I'm at the risk of getting quote-unquote political. How did you feel about Cody's American Dream promo and his feud with Anthony Gogo? Cody has mentioned his political aspirations in interviews and wanting to run for Senate in Georgia. Was the promo designed as a test for future speeches? No, I don't think it was a test for future speeches where he went in there thinking, oh, maybe let's try this out to see if it would work if I eventually run for Senate one day in Georgia. I don't think so. I think he just kind of leans into that stuff because that's what he's passionate about. I did not like the promo. I like Cody is one of the best talkers in the business. His delivery is awesome. He's emotional. He's dramatic. I just don't know what any of what he had to say. My problem with the promo was this. It didn't offend me or anything, but my problem with the promo was this. Nothing of what he said had almost anything to do, I thought, with the Anthony Gogo feud. They're trying to force this narrative now that Gogo is like anti-America, which I guess has been kind of playing up on Twitter and stuff, but the feud came out of nowhere. Like, the only reason we're even getting this match is because Cody was initially feuding with QT, and they kind of branched off into a Gogo, which is smart, because a Gogo is much better than Marshall, and much more interesting. But they were never saying, oh, we're anti-America. He's the only one in that group that is not from America, I'm pretty sure. Maybe one of the other members isn't American, I'm not sure, but, like, he's the only one playing up like, oh, fuck America, blah, blah, blah. And they're not like that. He's the only one in the group that is like that. I don't know, it felt very forced. Didn't make me care about the match anymore. I am looking forward to the match to see how they do, and I like a Gogo, I like Cody Rhodes, but it was just bizarre. Like, he was talking about his kid and race and all this other shit. It's like, that's great, but this has nothing to do with anything, dude. Literally anything going on that you're talking about. You're trying to make a mid-card feud feel like it was, like the biggest, like it's, I don't know, like it's a race war or some shit, or I don't even fucking know. Like if you touch upon that stuff and it makes sense, you tie it what's going into the world right now and it makes sense, and he's saying I sympathize with people out there or some shit, I would be fine with that. And again, I wasn't offended by what he said last week. It wasn't like an offensive thing. It was just bizarre. Like, I don't even really know why he would touch upon, like, he even mentioned politics. Like, dude, who fucking cares? Like, it has nothing to do with what this feud is supposed to be about. Even if it is, like, it feels way too forced. So, yeah, I was not a fan of that promo. His next question, do you think Chris Jericho is meant to be written off AEW after Blood and Guts, but the controversy around the ending bump caused AEW to backtrack, assuming that's the case for this and Revolution's ending, writing off Jon Moxley? What do you make of AEW's backtracking? I don't know if it was, though. We assume that, and that's what I thought, too. I don't know if that's the case, because what they're doing now with Moxley makes sense. So if the plan was for Moxley to leave, and then they just kind of went off of that, like, oh man, it didn't look good, let's keep him on the show. I don't know. I thought that initially, but the fact that we're now getting Moxley and Kingston versus the Young Bucks tells me that was always the plan. Because the transition from Moxley and Omega to him and Kingston versus the Bucks has been kind of seamless. So I don't know what you would do with Kingston. And Kingston being kind of ripped away from the Butcher and Blade felt abrupt, and there was no explanation about that. You won't see people complaining about that, but there was no explanation over that. And would you really leave Moxley off the show? Like, Renee Young, I don't think is due yet. She might be due in the next couple months. I'm not 100% sure. Probably by June or I think her date is July, isn't it? Or maybe it's August. I don't remember. But they're not going to take them off TV sooner than they have to, coming up with one of their bigger pay-per-views coming up. So I don't know what you would do with the Bucks at the pay-per-view. Maybe they would have done the Bucks and SCU. I don't know. So I think the Moxley thing, again, if he was supposed to be written off in that moment and it came off terrible, they would find another way to do it. That's what I'm thinking now. Like, if they really wanted to write him off, give him some time off and bring him back soon after, maybe he was only going to be written off for a month. I mean, that's entirely possible. I do think the end game was always supposed to be him and Kingston versus the Bucks, because it feels too perfect to not do at this point. And if that was a case of backtracking, well done on AEW, because they did a great job of making it feel seamless. So if they really wanted Moxley to take time off, they would have found another way to write him off in the weeks that followed. With Jericho, I thought the exact same thing. I think I said it here. Write him off the show for a couple weeks, but then he was right back on the show this past Wednesday. Maybe the idea was for him to at least take time off until Double or Nothing, and then he comes back to the pay-per-view. I still would have done that. Even though the bump did not come off great, I still would have had him disappear until the pay-per-view. Or at least until this week. A week is ridiculous. He was right back on TV this week. Again, I don't think, because the bump came off poorly, they're not like, oh, we got to change plans, because if Jericho takes time off, you can't do the Stadium Stampede match. That sounds like it was also always the plan. That's not something they just kind of randomly put together. Otherwise, I think they would have done MJF and Sammy. But again, they're not going to just change plans because the botch came off poorly. They would have just still kept Jericho off the show or found another way to write him off the show. So, if Jericho wasn't on the pay-per-view and he was in the corner of Sammy, then it would be like, yeah, this is weird. Like, they definitely botched the bump. They did, we know that. They botched the camera work or whatever. And as a result of that, they're bringing him back. And they're just going to put him in the corner, even though he was never in the cards for the pay-per-view. The fact that he's in the pay-per-view match tells me that he was never supposed to take time off. Which is weird to me, because that bump was pretty brutal, but whatever. So, I don't think it's backtracking. The endings were just terrible in both cases, for different reasons. But if it is backtracking, again, they did a good job of making it not really feel like that. But if it is, they got to do a better job of shit kind of, because this is stuff that easily could have been avoidable. With the Botcha Revolution, that was just embarrassing. The Blood and Guts thing could have easily been avoided. Easily. And that's not like, oh, someone got hurt, we got to change plans. Like, no, that's you just fucking up. So, they got to do a better job of that shit. His last question here. What did you make of the zombies at WrestleMania Backlash? Are they worth the notoriety they've been receiving from fans? I already talked about this, but yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, people thinking, oh, people are overreacting about the zombies. No, it was pretty bad. It was bad enough to where people had their view of the show skewed because of how bad it was. On an otherwise great show, I thought. It was a very enjoyable event overall. Nah, the zombie shit was well-deserved. Again, I can't sit here and not make fun of zombies, but then rant a year ago with the dumb ninjas that we got at Backlash. I feel like this is an annual Backlash thing. Backlash last year, we got the dumbass ninjas with Tozawa and the Raiders and the Prophets. Holy shit, that was terrible. One of the worst cinematic things they've done so far. They've done yet. So, yeah, it was one of those type of things where it just felt like a just giant waste of time. Priest gained nothing from the win because he's already beaten Miz a bunch. It's not even like he won a championship. Like, it was just a random match that didn't need to happen anyway. The zombies were not good. Again, the makeup was cool and they acted fine, but the fact that the wrestlers had to sell for it when we know zombies aren't real, I don't know. The whole thing was just stupid. It was just really dumb. Like, even worse than some of the Fiend and Alexa Bliss stuff they've done in the last couple of months, which I didn't really, a lot of that I didn't mind. This was pretty stupid, though. So, yeah, it's not like people are overreacting. A lot of people are kind of, it turns them off on the product. No matter how good that pay-per-view was, it'll turn people off on the show. And that's why the rating, I think, was like the worst viewership of the year. Probably not just because of the zombies, but it tells people, it's still same old WWE. Let's not even bother tuning in. So it's not just because of the zombies, but it tells people, they're still the same shitty creative company we've had for a couple of years now. Why even bother watching Raw? So that's my view on it. Scarlet One from Twitter, best and worst of WrestleMania Backlash. Well, the worst was obviously the Priest and Miz match, if only for the zombies. Everything else I thought was really good. The finish to Bianca and Bayley wasn't the greatest, but it was a good match. I thought the two triple threats were great. And I thought the main event was awesome. And I thought the tag title match was also really good. And probably the best part about Backlash, even more than anything else on the show, was the fact that it was 6 matches. 6 matches, 3-hour show, that's it. I wish we can get that every month. Because some of these pay-per-view cards are like 10 matches. I mean, even at WrestleMania, to be honest with you, it was 7 matches per night. The 2-night Manias, I don't mind. It's the 15-match cards and the 10-match cards. It's like, holy shit. I don't know. Like, when the fans come back, we need these shorter shows to stick. Because I think they are very refreshing, and it makes the shows that much better when we have like a 5-hour show. Especially when you do pay-per-views every month. AEW, I hate when they do the 5-hour shows, but they do 4 pay-per-views a year. So I kind of get it. In WWE's case, there's no reason to have 4 or 5-hour pay-per-views, especially when they're not very good pay-per-views. The shorter, the better, and I thought Backlash was good overall, aside from the dumb zombie shit. Last 3 questions here of the episode from @misdemeanor6. First of all, what did you make of Cody's promo last week? It was good, a tad long for me. I already talked about this, but I thought it felt forced. The delivery was good. The material was stupid. I mean, he's talking about all those random, like, actually serious issues, and then he's like, watch me fight Anthony Gogo at the pay-per-view. Like, this has nothing to do with anything. It was stupid, and it was way too long. He really could have just... And to be honest, I have a tendency to do this as well, where he talks for like 20 minutes to get to like a 2-minute point. And I guess I'm doing it right now. But I'm not on TV every week, so it's a little bit different. And I'm not Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes probably shouldn't be doing that because it actually has the opposite effect, and that I don't want to see him and Anthony Gogo at the pay-per-view if he just keeps rambling on and on and on and on. So yeah, way too long, felt forced, like the delivery, not a necessary promo though. Just say, a Gogo, 30-second pre-tape. A Gogo, I want you at the pay-per-view. I'm going to kick your ass. Make it a little more creative than that, but you don't have to really rely on real-life issues to sell people on a match that they weren't sold on previously. I thought that felt forced. Their second question, do you think it was too soon for QT Marshall to be beaten by Cody? No, I just don't care about QT Marshall. Like, I didn't want to see. I'm honestly kind of glad we're getting a Gogo and Rhodes at the pay-per-view. Kind of just shit on the promo that he cut, but I'm more sold on that than I am QT and Cody. I just don't give 2 shits about QT at all. The guy's promos are just average heel shit, and then his in-ring work is painfully bland. He's not terrible, but the guy looks like a fucking accountant, and he's not exciting whatsoever. I'm sorry. Maybe as a manager he can be better. As a tag team guy with Dustin, he was okay. But on his own, leading a faction, he's not exciting or entertaining or interesting enough to be doing any of those things. So, yeah, I really don't care. It's not like, oh man, they should have kept him undefeated longer and built him up longer. I just don't care. I'm glad that Cody just disposed of him so we can move on from that dumb feud that I didn't give a shit about. And the last question, can you see either Pac or Orange Cassidy winning against Kenny Omega this Sunday? Or not, is this Sunday? No, next Sunday, at Double or Nothing. No, I don't. This is the definition of a filler pay-per-view title defense. I think this match would be much better. Like, you can do filler title defenses. I mean, didn't they do like Joey Janela and Kenny on the show at one point a couple of months ago? I'm fine with that as like a Dynamite main event. And the thing is that I like Cassidy and Pac. The match is just completely random. There's no bad blood there between Omega and either one of those guys. Him and Orange have not interacted at all up until recently. And him and Pac, that hasn't been acknowledged in close to a year. And it's not like either Orange or Pac were gunning for the World Championship. They were feuding with each other in their respective factions. So, I don't know. I mean, it should be a very fun match, I'm sure of it. I don't think Omega's losing, nor should he lose. It's just a random waste of a title defense. Had they built up Cody and the stipulation wasn't in place, or really anyone else for the most part. I know Adam Page, they should save that for later on. It was too soon for Christian. I don't know. They probably should have figured this out, though, and started building. If they started building toward Pac and Orange getting a title shot 2 months ago, no complaints. But they started building towards it 2 weeks ago. Who cares? Who gives a shit? It's literally a title defense announced at the last literal second. Can we please do a better job of building stories here over the World Championship? At least him and Moxley Revolution, we knew Omega was winning, but it was a feud that had been built up over a while. That makes sense. Omega facing two people, yeah, one of which he's never faced before, yeah, it's fresh, but if there's no story there, which people like to clamor that WWE doesn't have, then what's the fucking point? Who cares? Anyway, that's it. That's going to do it, guys. I hate to end it on a negative note, but that's it for episode 390 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. Wasn't the whole May 19th thing 15 years ago today? Wasn't it in 06 when See No Evil came out? Well, go ahead and go watch See No Evil. I usually make it a point to watch that every October before Halloween, but I might have to watch it today since it was 15 years ago, I believe, to the day, since the release of See No Evil. So hopefully Kane doesn't come after you today. That would be nice. If you guys want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. And leave a comment down below on this very video. Include your question on next week's edition. Have a great rest of your week, guys. Plenty of content coming up, so be sure to hit that bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. We got, this video today. We got a Q&A video, or this is the Q&A video. We got the WrestleRant radio excerpts tomorrow. Friday, Dark Side of the Ring review. Saturday, SmackDown audio review and Talking Smack review. We actually did a meet and greet with Rhea Ripley the other day, Alexis and I, which was a lot of fun. And that is going up probably at some point in the next few days, so keep an eye out for that. Probably on Sunday, if I had to take a guess. And she was really, really nice. It was only 60 seconds, but you guys will get the video of that on Sunday, I believe. So stay tuned for that, and stay subscribed for that as well. Like I said, guys, have an awesome one. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.